After the end of the Second World War, the nations of the world thought that finally, just finally, there might be peace within our time, as former British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain had expertly put it. But just like Chamberlain's efforts for peace before the war began and Chuck E. Cheese's stock price, this ultimately collapsed. A nation, a country which had withstood and fought not just the Italians, but also the Germans and Bulgarians, was to learn this in a devastating way. The Second World War brought unwavering destruction to Greece, but alas, the destruction did not cease when the black flags of fascism fell from grace within Europe. Greetings, and as always, welcome to Brainspace. I do apologize for the rather long hiatus that I had to take, but alas, videos will be back shortly. I'm your host, Heetaarth, and today we'll be discussing one of the most monumental events within Europe after the Second World War and the start of the Cold War, the Greek Civil War. Greece is often known as the country of paradise, a country with great beaches, stunning architecture, and an overwhelmingly beautiful natural scenery. However, during the 1940s, it was a country which was stifled with war. Greece had just recovered from a devastating Axis power occupation. The occupation lasted a devastating 3 long years, in which Greece lost about 80% of its industry, 28% of its infrastructure, 90% of its bridges, and nearly a quarter of all the forests within the country. With Romania occupied by the Soviet Union towards the end of the war, especially the lucrative oil fields within the country, which the Axis powers, most definitely Germany, relied upon to secure its war efforts, the Germans saw no potential gain in remaining in the Balkans. With this in mind, they began a full-scale evacuation from Greece. It is also important to note that at this time, Italy was a German puppet state. Bulgaria faced a Soviet invasion from the north. Therefore, these countries had to turn their attention elsewhere, away from Greece, and were not able to assist Germany in maintaining their occupation of the country. With the Germans retreating from Greece, British troops then proceeded to arrive into Greece and place the government in exile led by Prime Minister Georgios Papandreou and King George II, which had been residing in Egypt within exile throughout the duration of the war, back into power. There also remain several paramilitary groups within Greece intending to fight from inside enemy lines. The largest of these groups were the EAM, or the National Liberation Front of Greece in English, a socialist Greek nationalist group which had fought the Axis powers alongside other groups such as the National Republican Greek League, which later tried to join the Greek government before its eventual civil war and collapse. With the Second World War over, the Greek government in exile, now back in power, signed an agreement between all Greek resistance groups, including the EAM, to completely demobilize all paramilitary groups within the country and for a general election to be put forward into place as soon as possible. This was manifested in the Treaty of Arcasia, which all parties, once again, including the EAM, had signed in order to move forward into a new era of prosperity for the Greek people. The Treaty of Verkhasia also provided amnesty to those who fought the German occupation to liberate Greece. The Communist Party of Greece, which had fought to liberate Greece from Axis occupation, remained legal within the country, and its goal was to run for elections peacefully. However, upon crackdowns due to its hidden militant activity, members of the Communist Party of Greece had retreated into the mountainous areas of the country, and some retreated into Yugoslavia. In 1946, the Communist Party had boycotted the elections, and such had led to a victory of the United Alignment of Nationalists, a conservative pro monarchist party. I think you can see where this is going. Later in the same year, a referendum on whether or not to retain the monarchy within Greece had passed in favor of keeping the monarchy. The Communist Party of Greece and the EAM had declared that this referendum and its results were falsified and faked. It is important to note, however, that the king was heavily backed by the British, and Nigel Clive, the British liaison officer to the Greek government, had described Greece as a protectorate of the British. I'm sure nothing wrong could have happened with Greece having Britain as its protectorate, because that's worked out incredibly well in history. With all these factors into account, war began within Greece in 1946. And this war was incredibly devastating, and unlike today's wars, wasn't on Twitter. The civil war began when the EAM attacked a police station within the village of Litochoro on the night before the elections. With this, exiled Greek communists in Yugoslavia had later crossed the border and had moved into northern Greece, meeting with Greek communists in the mountain areas. War had then broken out as skirmishes began between government and communist forces. Evidence shows, however, that the communists had maintained significant communication with the Soviet Union and had actively received support from such, as well as communist regimes within Albania and, most importantly, the aforementioned Yugoslavia. A brutal guerrilla war was fought between the communist forces and monarchist/democratic elements of the Greek government. In fear of a communist uprising, the Greek government was backed by the British as well as the United States of America. Both had funded the Greek government immensely, with Britain and the United States sending military equipment and food to the Greek army, as well as military training, which was overseen by Lieutenant General Ronald Scobie of the British Army and James Van Fleet of the American Army. On the communist side, Yugoslavia had allowed for ethnic Greeks living in the modern day northern Macedonia to participate in such, of which around 11,000 had participated, taking up arms for the communists. The communists initially had much successes. They took control over large parts of rural northern Greece and were projected to win. However, many of the Greek soldiers had experience fighting the Axis powers and gained significant American and British aid. Furthermore, there was a diplomatic split between Joseph Broz Tito of Yugoslavia and Joseph Stalin of the USSR, which led to Yugoslavia aligning to neutrality throughout the rest of the Cold War. Within this split, the Greek communists had chosen to align themselves with the Soviet Union rather than Yugoslavia, due to them being the first and most influential communist state. As Yugoslavia was the main supporter of the Greek communists, this led to a withdrawal of Yugoslav support and an immense lack of combat operational success for the Greek communists. Eventually, the communists were driven back by World War II Greek veteran General Alexander Papagos, leading to many communists abandoning flanks and retreating to Albania, with some even gaining asylum within the Soviet Union, in most interestingly, the Tajik SSR, or Soviet Socialist Republic. With such, the Greek government went on an all out hunt for the communists, and by 1949, over 100,000 Greek communists were arrested or captured. This officially led to the militant remnants of such disbanding, and the Communist Party of Greece began to run peacefully for elections. So, how has this affected Greece now? Well, Greece remains to be one of the most right leaning countries within the European Union, and with good reason. The war remained to be one of the most devastating internal civil wars in Europe. In a poll conducted by Gallup, 43% of Greeks had said that the right wing, having won the Greek Civil War, was an inherently positive affair, with 13% responding with the latter and 44% of the Greek population voting either neither or not responding. In the time between the war and now, however, this war has largely been forgotten, even though it remained to be the first war to start the aforementioned Cold War. Lest we never forget. This is Heetaarth, your host, signing off.